Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to our Anatomy and Physiology series. Today we will be talking about basic histology. An outline of this presentation goes as follows. We will discuss epithelial tissue, which is classified by the number of cell layers and the shape of the cells. Connective tissue will be discussed as well, which consists of solid connective tissue, such as adipose tissue, which is fat tissue, dense connective tissue, cartilage, and bone, and liquid connective tissue, such as blood. We will talk about muscle tissues, such as skeletal muscle, smooth muscle, cardiac muscle, and we'll also talk about nervous tissue. You're kind of wondering why are we talking about histology in an anatomy lecture, and that's because it's nice to have an idea of what the basic cell and tissue structure of various different kinds of tissues looks like. So let's get into it. Let's talk about epithelial tissue. Epithelial tissue covers body surfaces, it lines body cavities, and it forms the majority of glands. Epithelial cells have an apical or top surface and a basal or bottom surface. And if you look at this picture here, you can see the apical surface, which points towards the lumen, and you have the basal surface of the cell. Let's discuss epithelial tissue. We're going to talk about the classification of epithelial tissue, and we're going to talk about its classification by the number of cell layers. Simple epithelial tissue refers to one cell layer. Stratified epithelial tissue refers to multiple, which means two or more cell layers. And then we have pseudostratified, which is really one cell layer, but it looks like more than one cell layer because the nuclei of the cells are at different levels, hence the name pseudostratified. We'll also talk about classification by cell shape. So squamous cells are flat cells. Just think that squamous sounds a lot like squished, which means flattened. Cuboidal cells, which are cube-shaped, which are as tall as they are wide. Columnar, which are column-shaped, taller than they are wide. And transitional, which vary between cuboidal shape and squamous shape. And this kind of epithelium is typically only found in the urinary tract, but we'll get more into that later. Let's talk about simple squamous epithelium. So simple squamous. So simple means single layer, and squamous means that the cells are flattened. So and then if you look at this single layer right here, it's one cell with flattened cells, hence simple squamous epithelium. Simple stratified epithelium. You got multiple layers of flattened cells. Simple cuboidal epithelium. Got a single layer of cube-shaped cells. Note that the cells are as tall as they are wide. Stratified cuboidal epithelium. You have two layers, which makes it multiple, because as you recall, two or more layers makes it multiple layers, hence stratified. And cuboidal, the cells are cube-shaped. Simple columnar epithelium. You got this single layer of columnar cells. These cells are taller than they are wide, and note that the nuclei are at the same height, so you can tell that this is clearly a single layer of columnar cells. Pseudostratified columnar epithelium. So take a look at this. You have a single layer of column-shaped cells with nuclei at various levels. So you would think that this could be stratified epithelium, but it's not really stratified. It's only one layer. It's just that the nuclei are at different levels. Kind of reminds me of a Meek Mill song, The Levels to This. I can't help myself. All right. Transitional epithelium. Cells vary in shape from being cuboidal to more flattened. And as I mentioned in the beginning of this lecture, they're only found in structures lining the urinary tract, such as ureters and the urinary bladder. So this is your transitional epithelium. You got your dome-shaped cells and you got your more flattened cells at the bottom. Adipose tissue. So adipose tissue looks like big bags of empty space. So if you see this on a slide, this is most likely adipose tissue. It's not subtle. Connective tissue. This is dense, regular connective tissue. And note that the red collagen fibers, which are intermingled with the dark nuclei of the fibroblasts. The fibroblast is a characteristic of this type of tissue. And fibroblasts make collagen, which is the red stuff. Cartilage. This is specifically hyaline cartilage. You have these lacunae with the chondrocytes in them. So lacunae means lakes. And the name itself even almost has a word lake in it. And you got these chondrocytes within the lacunae. And the characteristic cell is, guess what? The chondrocyte. This is an example of compact bone. It kind of has an onion peel look to it. The characteristic cell of the bone is the osteocyte. Now let's take a look at blood. This is a peripheral blood smear, which has red blood cells, white blood cells, and platelets. You got your red blood cells, which are otherwise known as erythrocytes, or which are otherwise known as RBCs. You got your white blood cells, which are known as leukocytes, or WBCs. Now let's move on to muscle. You got your skeletal muscle. And you're going to see this in a moment, but skeletal muscle has cylindrical, elongated cells with multiple peripheral nuclei and striations. They are voluntary, which means that you can tell it what to do. Smooth muscle consists of short spindle-shaped cells with single nuclei without striations. They're involuntary. So basically it means they do whatever the hell they want. You know, your brain doesn't tell it what to do. Then you got cardiac muscle, which has characteristics of both skeletal muscle and smooth muscle. Cardiac muscle consists of short branched cells which have 1 to 2 nuclei in them. They are striated, and there's also the presence of intercalated discs. And just like smooth muscle, they're involuntary, so they do whatever they want to do. And fortunately for us, what they want to do is keep the heart beating. Because if you think about it, your heart beats whether you tell it what to do or not. If you have to think about making your heart beat, that's a problem. So let's talk about skeletal muscle. So as I already mentioned, you have these elongated cylindrical cells. You got multiple peripheral nuclei. Like look at these nuclei in the periphery, on the outside, on the outer portion of the cell. You got these striations, these multiple striations, and they function in voluntary movement. You know, because think about it, like your bicep, for example. You tell it to contract so you can do a bicep curl, it contracts. Let's look at smooth muscle. You have these short spindle-shaped cells, And anything that's spindle-shaped means it's football-shaped. It has each of these cells have a single nucleus, which are central in the cell. There are no striations to be seen anywhere in this slide. And as I already mentioned, it functions in involuntary movement. Cardiac muscle has short branch cells. Look at that. There's some branching here, some branching here. It has 1 to 2 nuclei. One nucleus here, 2 nuclei here. One nucleus here, 2 nuclei here. And there are some striations present, as well as these intercalated discs. And they also function in involuntary movement, such as keeping the heart beating. The last is nervous tissue. Basically, you have a neuron with an axon and multiple short dendrites. We are done. And I put this here, we're done, yay. I saw it on the internet, it looked good. Anyway, like this video, subscribe. Thank you very much.